Let's go.
Hey, welcome. I'm so excited to have Mr. Larry Purchase of Toronto, North York with us, a real estate icon. And I watch Larry online and I'm learning a lot and I have some questions. The first one being, welcome, Larry. Please introduce yourself to Camel Care University audience.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I too have been following you. We've been friends on Facebook for a while, and it's interesting because on social media platforms, people of a feather flock together, right? People of the same mindset tend to congregate and gather together. Yeah, I'm in downtown Toronto, been living here. I'm from down east originally, from Newfoundland, born and raised. Went to university at Acadia University in Nova Scotia, studied business, finance. Upon graduation, I had two career paths. One was the RCMP so that was kind of interesting to be accepted for that. And then the other one, I got this really great job offer with the Bank of Montreal North American Corporate Banking Division in downtown Toronto. So relocated to Toronto and came up and started my Bay Street corporate real estate banking career and spent about 15 years or so there and then became an unfortunate victim of the recession in the early 90s. And rather than going back to that corporate world, that's all buttoned up, I figured get out there and get in something where you're working with people and you're just, the law of the jungle, you eat what you kill sort of thing.
I love the
So
spirit, Larry.
went into real estate, because I just love I love everything about it, working on your own, working with people, and there's been no turning back. And first year in the business, I was one of the top agents in a global empire of about 1,000 offices worldwide and about 9,000 agents. I became one of the, but at that first year in the business, I just worked round the clock. I was determined. I burned my ships. There was no turning back. I was either going to swim or I was going to sink. So I'm a good swimmer.
Amazing, amazing. And prior to this recording, you told me that your people in your office are asking, Larry, where you get this energy? Let me start with that. Where does your energy come from?
Well, I just, I have a zest for life, I've seen a lot of ups and downs. I've seen people, I have friends who are hugely successful but miserable. My attitude is I wake up in the morning, I got my health, I got the day ahead of me. Hallelujah, thank you, God, right? And I take it from there. And I try to get along with people. I try to help people where I can. Somebody said to me years ago, he was an older guy that I was so influenced by. And he said to me, he said, always make your life's ambition. If you can get through the day and lift one soul, help one person, count that as a very successful day. And I took that to heart. And that's kind of how I just try to roll these days. Although there are days when some people just,
Get under your skin.
it's hard. You got to bite on your tongue, I'll tell you. But
That's that's
right?
what I call the power of into entrepreneurship. Larry, real estate is considered as a high pressure industry.
It is.
How you manage to bring together, bring care, trust, and community building it together as a realtor. It's a tough job. I have a lot of friends who are realtors, but you stand out. How do you stand out as a realtor?
Well, I think I have one very basic acid test. First of all, I'm a sole operator. I do the business. If people hire me for me, they get my undivided attention. I treat it, and this is how I grow my business. I've got clients I started with 30 years ago. One gentleman in particular, I'm now dealing with his great grandchildren. So I've dealt with him, his kids, their kids, and now their kids' kids. And they've kept me in the family. They were a wealthy family. They've owned buildings, big offices, residences. I started out doing commercial, right? And I had a lot of success with that. And I morphed into the residential because these people that own apartment buildings and miniature mini malls and office complexes, investment properties, they also have personal residential properties. So they kind of dragged me in. They said, I want you to handle my residential stuff. So that's how I became what they call a resi-mercial, residential slash commercial. I do both, and I love it. And I give what makes me succeed. I give the personal service. I have never joined a team. A team is just a four-letter word for production line, you know? People want to deal with me for me, and especially in the early days, because I had some pretty influential clients. I was their banker. And then when I left, they entrusted me with doing their, so I just always had this has got to be my baby. I've got my relationship. So I work on building relationships with people. And you do that by the personal touch. If you're going to hire Larry Purchase, you're not getting one of my assistants or one of my underlings. I hear that as a complaint all the time. This agent signed me up. Next thing you know, I got a bunch of people dealing with me I've never met. I don't even know. So I bring the personal touch. And the acid test that I always apply is if I got a client that's buying this property, I say to myself, would I invest? Would I buy this property? And if I can come up with at least one reason why I wouldn't, or I wouldn't even consider it, I have to discuss that with my clients. And you know what? Clients love that honesty and integrity. And they're, well, thank you very much. That's an angle I never looked at. We'll certainly consider it. So that's the acid test I bring. And you know what? People come back to me. When you sell a property, the first thing most people do when they move in is they have a little housewarming, they have a little party or a barbecue. And inevitably, the conversation comes around real estate. Everybody likes to talk about real estate. So I want that conversation to be, I want those clients to be singing my praises. The last thing I need is for them to be unhappy with me and to say things like, well, don't ever use Larry Purchase because he's just awful. That's not a conversation you ever want to go. You always try to have the, so my business is built largely on referrals.
We love referral business, Larry, and that's the reason at the end I'm gonna have some questions for you about the details and especially about young people in the housing market right now. I
Yep.
came here as a young man. Housing was the first issue. I had an opportunity on Young and Shepherd, the area, to buy a house for $475,000 and I missed it. The
That
guy
wouldn't even put a fence around a house up in that area now.
the real estate who was guiding me was not knowledgeable, maybe first time, maybe
Yeah.
buyer, maybe new to Canada, maybe second language. There's a lot of issues we can discuss, but can you share a moment where building trust really turned the page for you with your one customer or any customers? Building trust is the key to doing a generational business. You have customers for life. How do you build
Yeah.
that trust, Larry?
Well, for example, one I remember about 15 years ago, I was dealing with a young couple. They were I was so the first thing I do is I meet with people and I get their wish list and I walk them through. Make sure you got your financing lined up. Start talking to the bank. Find out what you can afford, what you can. So I walk them through a schedule of what to do, what not to do, how to prepare yourself. Then I take a wish list. What's important to you? Forget the financial considerations right now, price point, because that's always important. What areas have you considered? What's important in a house? What facilities around you want to be there near the lake, near schools, near shopping, near churches, near mosques? What's important to you? You know what because your social life feeds where it's important to live. And I build that. And then I'll oops, you disappeared on me. And then I will build, you just disappeared. Sorry about that.
Sorry, yeah, it was a glitch in my system, but I'm here. I'm paying
Uh,
attention. I'm learning from Larry Purchase, and the next purchase of a big house or small house or even a shack should be made with Larry Purchase because he puts a personal touch on it, and he's trying to explain how building trust is so valuable.
yes. So, for one example, about 15 years ago, I had a young couple. So, we went through all that process. I then set up a profile for them, and the system will pull out new listings that match their wish list, and it'll send them to them. So, and then, the couple will go through and say, well, let's go today and look at this one, that one, that one. So they do that. I'll eyeball the listings. I'll find as much out about the neighborhood as I can. Um, in one particular case, one of the houses we looked at, the wife completely loved the house. And the husband was like, yeah, it's kind of interesting. Maybe we should look at more. She said, no, I want to buy it. I want to buy it. I said, okay, guys, you know what? Let's go sit in a coffee shop and have a chat about this to get away from the house, away from the people there. And they had a young daughter, a young 7 or 8 year old daughter. So when we went to the coffee shop, I first thing I said to them when we got our coffees and our donuts, because real estate people live on coffee. Maybe that's why I have so much energy. So the first thing we did when we sat down is I said to the wife, I said, okay, you and I are going to have a disagreement about this house because I do not want you to buy this house. She looked at me somewhat shocked and she said, well, why would you say that? So then I told her, I said, well, I told her about the neighborhood. And in that particularly neighborhood, there was a lot of crime. You can go on the police stats and look at crimes. And there was a very well-known motorcycle gang that had their motorcycle clubhouse just around the corner. I said, now, I don't have to tell you what happens in these areas. You got a young daughter, it's probably not the safest place to be. So they so appreciated my honesty and, integrity, right? I mean, and the husband laughingly said to me, you just talked yourself out of a commission. I said, no, I don't. Why? You plan to go to another agent? Absolutely not. I said, well, then I didn't talk myself out of a commission. I talked myself out of a sale today. But you're still going to buy with me, so I'm still going to get a commission. I'm just, if you don't want me to be honest, let me know.
Amazing policy, how honestly
Yeah.
it really works. People are trying to make a quick deal and make some cash. And I have a lot of friends in real estate. I really value what you're saying, Larry.
Yeah.
What advice would you give someone who's looking into break into the real estate by building a value-based customer service?
I
How
think,
do you get people refer their children and their grandchildren to Larry Purchase? What's that?
well, by being honest, being knowledgeable, knowing the product, knowing the value, being totally honest and open with them. It was just yesterday we were talking to some commercial clients, and I said to them right up front, I said, now don't expect this to happen within 30, 60, or 90 days. The market is slow right now. We're going to do everything we can. We have to beat the bushes. We're going to do the work, but it's not going to happen overnight. So it's about meeting client expectations. Don't over anticipate. I'm seeing far too many listings right now that are overpriced. I've been outbid by some younger agent telling the seller they can get $300,000 to $400,000 more than I suggested. I'll simply say to the sellers, well, you know what? If he can do that, I'd encourage you to go with him. I suspect you're being given a sales pitch, but the last thing you want is your house to sit up on that market for 8 7 8 months overpriced. That does some damage to it. So, anybody can pull a number out of the hat. Here's what's happening in the neighborhood. Here's what's happening with interest rates. Here's what's happening with tariffs. We're in a slow period. These type of properties are slow going. The condo market right now, for example, it's very slow moving. Good time to buy one, not such a good time to be selling one because they're sitting around and we're seeing constant price reductions. So, again, personal service, integrity, honesty, meet expectations. Don't overblow the expectations. Don't overpromise and underdeliver. Overdeliver and underpromise, if anything, right?
That's incredible. Most people or agents get training and learn this stuff, but a reminder by somebody like you who has built up such a business is absolutely incredible and invaluable. Thank you so much. Let me ask you this about first-time home buyers. Lots of immigrants come to this country. This was built by immigrants. What's your
Yep.
best advice right now? Me and my spouse, we bought a house last year. Now, if I knew Larry purchased through these videos with Camel Care, I would have contacted you. But speed, location, those things are really important to us. And the gentleman did deliver in a speed time, and he did get us a place on five, you know, soccer fields. I love running. I like activity, and it's just the perfect. You knowing your customers absolutely the key. What's your
Exactly.
best advice for newcomers who are thinking of putting roots in Canada, buying a house? What's the best strategy now?
Meet with, you'll find that a lot of newcomers to the country from where they are. I think they do them unless a lot of newcomers like to stay within their community. I would encourage you to look outside your community. Look at other agents. Don't just stick with somebody because they feel they have you in their back pocket. Speak to seasoned agents. Make sure experience, integrity are there. Look at their digital footprint. What are these guys doing? Are they online? Are they providing value? You can easily investigate an agent. Just put their name in the Google bar and you'll see what they're doing. Look at the content. I see too far right now. We're in the political. We're in a political bullfight, and I see agents out there. I support this politician. I support that, and they're arguing and they're fighting, and that is just a no-win situation for anybody. It's okay to have an opinion. If you can have a respectful discussion and say, "Well, I don't like this guy for these reasons," and if the other person's saying, "Yeah, you know what, I hear you," that kind of discussion's okay, but not when you're saying, "Oh, this guy's a liar, he's corrupt, he's lying." That's just, I mean, that's American politics right now. We don't have room for that in Canada, right? We don't have.
Absolutely. Well, there's the one saying that I heard that politics and religion never make a good topic for conversation. So, as professionals, we try to stay. And as a business owner, Canadian business owner, I've never tried just to stay within my community. I want to encourage all
Yes,
Canadians of all backgrounds, Indian, Chinese, Iranian, whoever you are, I believe you got to be like the scout to go out of your community to find out what's available. Maybe other communities have tips and trips. What do you think about
absolutely,
that?
absolutely. Because sometimes by staying in their own community, they're getting a very narrow approach to the process. They're keeping in the strictures of their community. Branch out, talk to other agents, look at other areas. Don't be afraid to ask the pointed questions. Do research. Just because somebody has a real estate license, I mean, I've been around for 30 years. I worked in finance on Bay Street. I've been on the board of directors, Toronto Real Estate Board. I chaired the commercial division. I was on the finance committee at Ontario Real Estate Association. I have a ton of it. I've been award winning for many years. I have a ton of experience. So the funny thing, and this is what I like to talk to clients about, I say, now look at my pedigree, um, and you're going to pay no more for that than you are the guy who just got his real estate license. So doesn't it make sense to put all that heavyweight experience behind you? That's the selling feature. That's another value proposition, right?
So wonderful advice coming from you, Larry. One of my mentors, I go to a lot of personal development, as you know, and I love your mindset. I see every morning you post a powerful morning thought for people. How important are positive reminders in business?
I do the same thing. I do the same thing. My company asked me a couple of years ago if I'd be interested in mentoring new agents. Well, the first time I was thrilled by the opportunity, and because I love meeting with people, I love interacting with people. So this young guy with his license, the first day we met, he asked me to be his mentor, and I happily took him on, and he was a go-getter. So the first thing we did, we sat in the boardroom and I said, you know what? You're fresh out of school. You got your license. You've been through all the academics. So I'm not going to sit down and structure a program with more books and more text. You know all that right now. I bet you got a lot of questions swirling in your head about where do I go from here? He said, and he came right alive. He said, I absolutely do. I said, well, let's start with this. Right now, you and I are going to go for a beer and get to know each other. But I want you to go away for homework. Let's meet every Friday in our boardroom and go away. Next week, when you come in, I want you to have a list of questions to ask me about what's swirling in your head. Because that's what the Buddhists refer to as, monkey brain, lots of thoughts. It's the same with a new agent. You got a lot of questions about how to get going. So why don't you put those down on paper, get you to think about your business, and let's sit and talk about them. And he lit right up and he said, "You know what? This is kind of what I was hoping for." We started, and boom, in about 8 months of doing that and meeting, answering his questions, helping him, showing him the ropes. His first year in the business, he won an award at our office. He won an award at our office because he was, it's not only me, it was him. He was hungry for the information. But I think we structured a program. It's about listening to people. I listened to his concerns, his thoughts, what was swirling in his head, and we dealt with that. And once he had the questions to that, he was off to the races. That's a lot like in life, isn't it? You have a lot of questions in your head, you know?
Well, this is incredible because you're not only providing your customer with amazing service. You're giving them homework, you're giving them steps,
Yeah,
whether it's a buyer,
yeah,
whether it's a seller, whether it's just a guy you're training, you give them a specific homework to do some things.
yeah.
What are some of the things that new buyers can do besides, Googling the agent and this and that? Overall, how do you see the Canadian housing industry unfold in 2025?
Well, every industry, I've been around for a long time, so I've seen every imaginable scenario in real estate. This one right now doesn't panic me. It doesn't. We live in Canada. You have to admit, we got a pretty enviable country here, right? We got a place that people love. We have a diverse, I have friends from every corner of the world, which enriches my life. We go out to their restaurants, their communities. I mean, it's fun being exposed to all that. So, what was your question? I got off topic there.
The question was that you give them a homework. What's the homework for the new person who's thinking of buying a house this year? What do you see the forecasts? I know
Okay,
there's a lot of
look,
uncertainty, but
yeah. So, in terms of real estate, where it's going, exactly. You asked. Bottom line is, yeah, things are a little bit slow right now, but they're moving. Properties are moving. We Real estate is something that's it's kind of inflation proof to a degree because you, your wife, your kids, you need to live somewhere. No matter what happens to the economy, you need to live somewhere. I need to live somewhere. Everybody out there needs to live somewhere, you know? So there's always going to be demand. There's always going to be a market. Like I said earlier, decide what's important to you. If you're new Muslims coming to the country, do you want to be near this? I hear some people say, yeah, being close to the mosque, it's very important. Other people say, no, my mosque is very important. I don't want to be right next door, though. I want to have some distance so that I can go there. I want to be in a community. I want to be near shopping. I want to be near transportation. I want to be near a soccer field. I want to be near a basketball court or a golf course. So sit down and really think about the things that are important to you. Look at your finances. Talk to the bank. Find out what you can afford. Do you have enough resources behind you? Because you're new to the country, you probably don't have credit here. You may need a higher level of deposit. Those are all important things. Line your ducks up. Speak to the bank, ask them what they're going to do or what you're going to need, what you can afford. Then do the research. Just as important it is to do the research on your financing, do your research on your real estate people. Don't just grab the first guy that's from your community because maybe he could be a guy that's just feeding on that community.
allow
And,
me
and
to elaborate on that. You just brought a big point out. I met Ali. I'm an interpreter. I do interpretation for people who need surgical or brain or serious stuff. This guy lost a leg, and he told me in the story of recovery and, helping him out with all of this and offering some Camel care comfort. And he told me that he lost $150,000 of his savings he brought from Iran to a real estate or two of them who tagged him, one Irani, one Pakistani, led him to the dark alley. The money's gone and the police wouldn't do anything.
and see, this is, we hear a lot about that in different communities, not only like different communities. Unfortunately, there are bad people operating in every sphere. it can get pretty common when somebody comes from another part of the world. They lean on their community because they think it's safe, they can trust them. But there's also people there in that community that are going to feed on that newbie because the guy who's been living here for 10 years knows the system. He's in a prime opportunity to take advantage of that person. We've heard about stories, so that does happen. So that's why it's important. Look at somebody with a good track record. Look at somebody who's been around. Do your research. Do your
With
research. And here's the other thing. When you do have these guys in, ask them very specific questions. If that person you're interviewing is more interested in talking about himself and how many deals he did and how long he's been around, his awards, well, you know you're going to place second in his life, right? Because you're secondary to his image of himself.
wow.
So, right? Ask the right questions. Like find out, see what the person's all about. Look at see how many people are going to really delve into your needs, what you want, what your expectations. That's where it's all important. Listening to what the client wants. It goes back to managing client expectations, right? So watch them take their wish list. What's important to you? Maybe get referrals from them. What bank do I talk to? Where. So do your research. I can't emphasize that enough.
Mr.
Ask
Purchase.
friends.
Mm.
Ask friends who've bought if they had a happy experience with their real estate agent. That's a good lead in right there. Don't just pick up a paper and call the guy that's advertising, you know?
Unbelievable, unbelievable information, wisdom. The goal of this interviews is two things, Mr. Purchases. One is customer acquisition for both you, for me, for our communities, for all of the specialist network professionals, and the other one's audience acquisition to get the word out, to get these messages out to my community, to all other communities. If I wanted to, or thinking, or had a question about real estate, where would I find Mr. Larry Purchase? Are you
You
online? Do you have a website, or do you have a phone
Like I
line?
said, everybody has a computer today. Everybody has a phone. So you go in, you look. Where do you find me? You will find me, Larry Purchase. I have a website. Go to my website. Put my name in a Google bar. I do a lot of advertising. I do Facebook ads. I've done Google ads. I have a Facebook personal page, a Facebook business page. I have LinkedIn. I have Instagram. Although, to digress there for a minute, about a year and a half ago, the Instagram page I had 14,000 followers. I got hacked. And it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare trying to deal with Meta and get that back. So I finally just severed it and said, you know what? But I have TikTok, LinkedIn, I have X, formerly, Twitter. You have to have a digital footprint. And like you mentioned earlier, you and I connect because we post similar stuff. And people, I've had people private text me saying, I just love your motivational stuff. I love the content you're putting up. One woman the other day said, I don't like to talk publicly. I hope it's okay to message you privately. And I said, absolutely. She said, we're in Richmond Hill. We have some investment properties and we love watching your stuff. And when we're ready to sell, probably in the next couple of months, we're going to call you. Is that okay? And I said, absolutely. I'll come out this evening for dinner if you like. I'll bring dinner.
Why not? Who better than Larry Purchase? Because not only he brings wisdom of the ages and also a lot of real estate nuts, but he's nuggets. He is a fun person to be around. One of my teachers, Larry, most of these people,
Oh,
Brian
yeah.
Tracy,
Yeah.
all of these, Tom Hopkins in real estate, in Los Angeles, he was top
Yeah.
salesperson. He says, poor people should take rich people out for dinner and pay for it and take a pen and paper. So I am looking forward to taking you out for coffee and really getting to know Larry Purchase.
Love it. Love it.
I
And
appreciate it.
here's the other thing. Here's one other life story. I got a lot of life hacks. I never pass a person on the street that's asking for money. Because friends say to me, you're a fool. That's probably a drug addict. I say, you know what? If he is, then that's on him. But maybe the guy really needs a meal. So at worst, I gave him a couple bucks for his next drug. Big deal. But at best, maybe I just helped provide his next meal. Here's a story, and I have all kinds of experiences. I think it's by the way you interact with people. I was at a Burger King recently, and I there was a man. He looked really down. He was obviously homeless. Didn't look like a drug addict or an elk. Not that it mattered, but he just looked really down on his luck, really broken. And he was just asking for money if I could help provide a meal. And I said, well, you know what? I'll tell you what. I'm going in for my meal right now. Why don't you come with me? Let me buy you your meal. He looked at me. He said, you want to do that for me? Like it was a shock that I said, I absolutely want to do that for you. And if you like, we'll even buy another meal that you can take away with you later. So we did. I let him order. The woman was going to kick him out, and I said, "No, ma'am. He's my guest. He's with me. It's offensive that you're asking him to leave. I'm paying for his meal." She apologized, gave him his meal. He bought another one to take away, and I said, "You go sit down, sir. It's all. I mean, I got my meal." I saw him. He went right over to a corner, and he sat. And he just sat there quietly, did nothing. I got my meal and I saw him alone. So I went over and I said, "Sir, would you mind if I sat with you and have my lunch?" He said, "Really? You want?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to. Would you?" He said, "Please sit down." I sat down. We started talking. I started opening my food and I started to pick up the hamburger to eat. And you know what he said to me? And this almost made me cry. He said, "Sir, excuse me. Can we say a prayer first to thank God for the food we're about to eat?" And I looked at him and thought, wow, how powerful was that? Here's a man doesn't know where the next meal is coming from, but yet the little bit he had, he wanted to thank God for. I took away a big lesson from that. A big, big, big lesson. I mean, it makes me well up just thinking about it today. So that was so powerful. So I have those teachable learning moments almost on a daily basis. It's incredible.
Well, with that, Larry, we're gonna get close to the end of this, but I have learned so much. I really thank you so much. I'm looking forward to personally bring you a pair of these incredible camel kale socks. Those of you who want to be interviewed, please contact us. Those of you who are buying real estate, thinking real estate, questioning real estate, anxious about your investment, about your properties, contact Larry Purchase. You can just Google him. You'll find them just like I did. If I
Put
can
my name
find
in
them,
there.
you can find them. If you can't find them, contact me. I'll find them for you.
And by the way, I think your camel care stuff, I was reading up on your mother and her situation and the healing powers. You know what? There's a lot of healing power in nature all around us, right? We
Absolutely.
we
I love
just,
nature. You know, we grew up in a small village, Larry. I grew up with these socks till I was 17, 18. It was sheep wool. Now we went to Mongolia. We put a
yep,
lot of effort to make Canada healthier. And I'm so grateful you bring in this conversation forward to real estate agents because a lot of them work in big offices. I want to give every real estate agent a winner of the month a pair of socks if their broker gets involved. Hey, let's get your real estate going with Larry. Purchase right now. I
perfect.
really enjoyed this conversation, sir.
Thank you, sir. As did I. As did I.
I
Now,
am looking
I'm
forward
going to
to
keep following you and those beautiful messages you're putting up there on Facebook as well.
morning time. You inspire me. First message that I see every morning. I know you're a morning person's Larry Purchase. I put a like, and if I really like it, I put a share. So those of you who have enjoyed this interview, please share it with someone who's thinking real estate, who's thinking buying, who's thinking selling, who's thinking stress, who's thinking tariffs, who's thinking Trump, who's thinking everything. We are a great country. And with that,
Ignore,
Larry,
ignore the noise, right? That's what I would say. Ignore the noise. Noise is always there. Ignore it. Carry on with your life, move forward, plan, execute your plan, and live your life.
thank you, sir. Have a great day. We'll be
Thank
in
you very
touch. Thank
much.
you for watching.
Thanks, Arif.
Have a great day, sir.